He told me to stay in the tower, and the fire told me he was wrong, and for 37 minutes I was the only person who knew both of those things. My name is Brennan Oke. I'm 29 years old. I operate a fire lookout tower for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, Tower 7, Sandstone Ridge, 43 feet above the tallest oak in the Chichaqua Bottoms Greenbelt. I have been up here for 2 fire seasons. I know this landscape the way you know something you have been watching carefully for a long time. Its patterns, its moods, its specific way of misbehaving when the weather does something the models didn't predict. On a Tuesday in July, the weather did something the models didn't predict. At 14:06, a wind shift came through the Skunk River corridor. Not in the forecast, not in the morning briefing, not in any of the 3 weather updates I'd received since dawn. 40-degree directional change, sustained at 22 miles per hour, gusting to 31. I know these numbers precisely because I logged them in real time, the way I log everything, because the tower exists to be the eyes that the ground crews don't have. The problem was that the fire I had been tracking since 11:30, a contained burn on the Henderson Creek drainage, 200 acres, holding its line, had just been handed a new direction by that wind shift. And the new direction was mine. I picked up the radio, Air Attack Base, Tower 7. I have a wind event, bearing change approximately 40 degrees, sustained 22. The Henderson fire is going to make a run towards Sandstone Ridge. I need air support and I need a ground extraction window. Over. The response came back in 11 seconds. Tower 7, this is Marsh Air Attack, Tanker 9. I'm already repositioning. Talk to me about your smoke column. Over. I looked out the tower windows at the smoke column, which had changed shape in the last 4 minutes in a way I did not like. It's leaning, I said, northeast. Toward me. A pause. Short. Operational. Tower 7, what's your egress route? Sandstone Ridge Road, north. It was clear as of 40 minutes ago. It's not clear now, he said. I just flew it. The fire's already in the timber on the east side of the road. You have 1 window left. The service track on the west side of the ridge. It's narrow. It closes in. A pause I could hear him calculating through. 18 minutes if the wind holds. Less if it gusts. I looked at the service track through my binoculars. I looked at the smoke. If I leave the tower, I said, I lose the eyes on the northeast quadrant. Ground crews are working blind in that sector. If you don't leave the tower, he said, you're going to be working blind too. Permanently. It was the most precise thing anyone had ever said to me on a radio. It was also, I would later understand, the moment I started paying attention to him as something other than a voice. Give me 4 minutes, I said. You have 3, he said. I'll fly the service track and tell you what I see. Stay on this frequency. I'm not going anywhere, I said. And then, because the smoke was getting closer and the wind was doing what wind does when it has decided on a direction, yet. Don't go anywhere. Because what happened in the next 18 minutes is the part that changed everything, and it starts right here. His name was Marsh Calloway. I didn't know that yet. What I knew was his call sign, Tanker 9, Marsh Air Attack. And his voice, which had been on my secondary frequency all season as a background presence. The way certain voices are present without being noticed until suddenly they are the only thing you're tracking. In the next 3 minutes, while I was logging the wind event data and making the decision I already knew I had to make, he flew the service track twice. He gave me updates in the format I needed, surface conditions, smoke visibility, estimated closure time, without being asked for the format, which told me he had done this before and understood what a tower operator needed to hear and in what order. West service track is passable, he said. Barely. There's a section at the half-mile mark where the smoke is crossing the road. Visibility drops to about 30 feet. You need to go slow and you need to go now. I'm locking the tower, I said. Copy, he said. I'll fly cover. Keep your radio on. I locked the tower. I went down the 43 steps in a way that was faster than recommended and slower than my body wanted to go. I got in the DNR truck. I started driving. Tower 7, I have you visual, he said, when I pulled onto the service track. You're doing fine. Keep your speed under 15. The road surface is soft from yesterday's rain, and you don't want to drift. Copy, I said. I was driving and watching the smoke and listening to his voice and doing the specific kind of compartmentalization that emergency situations require, where you put everything that is not immediately operational into a box and close the lid and deal with it later. The box that day contained the smoke column moving faster than the model said it should, the service track narrowing as I drove, and the voice of a man I had never met that was, and I knew this even then, even in the middle of it, the most grounding thing in my operational environment. At the half-mile mark, the smoke crossed the road. "Tower 7, stop," he said. Immediately. "Don't drive into that. The column is crossing at about head height. If you drive through it, you lose all visual, and the road curves 30 meters ahead." I stopped. The smoke moved across the track in a gray-white wall, 30 feet of zero visibility. "How long?" I said. 40 seconds, he said. "Maybe 50. I'm watching the column from above. It's a pulse, not a sustained cross. It'll clear." I sat in the DNR truck with the smoke at my windshield and his voice in my ear and counted. At 43 seconds, the smoke thinned. At 51, it cleared enough to see the road curve ahead. "Go," he said. I went. I cleared the service track at 14:51. The DNR field supervisor's truck was at the Ridge Road junction. They'd seen the wind event and come for me, which I appreciated and which arrived approximately 6 minutes after I no longer needed it, which is how these things tend to work. I sat in my truck at the junction with the engine running and the radio still on and the supervisor talking at my window about the wind event and the fire's new track, and I was answering him correctly and professionally while also simultaneously waiting. At 14:58, the frequency clicked. "Tower 7, this is Tanker 9. Confirm you're clear of the ridge. Over." I keyed my radio. "Tanker 9, Tower 7. I'm clear. Service track junction, Sandstone Ridge Road. Over." A pause. Not operational. I had learned in 43 minutes to hear the difference. "Copy. Tower 7. Good driving." Another pause. That was a tight window. 51 seconds, I said. I counted. "I know," he said. "I counted too." The supervisor was still talking. I had stopped hearing him. "Tanker 9, I said. "What's your RTB time?" 90 minutes, he said. "I need to make 2 more passes on the Henderson north flank before I can release." "I'll be at the Des Moines Air Attack Base when you land," I said. This was not standard procedure. This was not in any protocol I had been trained on. I want to debrief in person. The pause this time was longer. 4 seconds, maybe 5. "Tower 7, he said, and something in his voice had shifted. The same voice, the same frequency, but carrying something additional that had not been there before, or that had been there and I was only now hearing it. "I'll see you on the ground. Here's what I need you to understand, and I'm asking you to stay with me because this is the part nobody puts in the incident report. I drove to the Des Moines Air Attack Base in 40 minutes. I filed my preliminary wind event log in the DNR field office on the south side of the facility. I changed out of my smoke-smelling field shirt into the spare I keep in the truck, which is a thing I have never done before a debrief, and which I noticed myself doing, and made a decision not to examine too closely. Then I went to the flight line and I waited. The Iowa summer evening was doing its specific thing, the light going long in gold across the flat country, the kind of light that makes even a working airfield look like something worth looking at. The heat of the day still in the tarmac, but the air beginning to move with the first suggestion of evening. Somewhere to the northeast, the Henderson fire was being worked by ground crews whose northeast quadrant visibility had been restored when I'd called in the wind event data in real time before I'd left the tower. I had stayed 3 minutes longer than I should have so that data was clean. I did not regret those 3 minutes. I heard the tanker before I saw it, the specific engine note of an air tanker on approach, descending over the Iowa prairie in the long gold light. It came in clean and straight and set down with the economy of a pilot who has landed on worse strips in worse conditions and doesn't need to make anything of it. I watched it taxi to the line. The door opened. He came down. I want to be precise here because precision is what I have and imprecision would be dishonest. He was around 36, with the build of someone who spends long hours in a cockpit and compensates for it by being deliberate about how he moves when he's out of one. Dark hair, shorter on the sides. His flight suit was marked with a Marsh air attack patch and the kind of operational wear that means someone has been doing this for years and has stopped worrying about whether the gear looks new. He was scanning the flight line when he stepped off the stairs. Not casually, the specific scan of a person looking for something specific. When he found me, he stopped scanning, he walked over. Direct, no detour, no performance of casualness. Tower 7, he said. Tanker 9, I said. We looked at each other. The flight line was noisy around us, ground crew, equipment, the ordinary operational sounds of a working air attack base, and we were standing in the middle of it. Two people who had spent 43 minutes in each other's ears and were now, for the first time, in possession of a face to go with the voice. His eyes were the specific brown of the Iowa River bottoms in late summer. Not a color I would have thought to describe as beautiful before that moment, and which I have thought about with some regularity since. He was looking at me with the full, direct attention that I recognized from his radio presence, complete, not performing anything, actually there. The smoke crossing, he said. At the half-mile mark, you stopped the exact moment I called it. You called it at the right moment, I said. Most people hesitate, he said. There's a beat where they want to see it themselves before they believe it. You'd already seen it, I said. From above, why would I need to see it too? Something moved through his expression. Slow, traveling inward before it came back out. You trusted the aerial view, he said. I trusted the person reading it, I said. The flight line noise continued around us. Neither of us had moved. We were standing approximately 3 feet apart in the Iowa evening, and the gold light was on both our faces, and I was aware, with the specific clarity that sometimes comes after a crisis has passed and the adrenaline has done its work and left, that I was exactly where I wanted to be. Brennan, I said, giving him my name, which he didn't have yet, which felt like a specific kind of offering. Marsh, he said, his first name, his real one, not the call sign. Not a call sign, I said. Family name, he said. I use it for both. A pause. It confused people in flight school. Does it still? I said. Less, he said. People figure it out. The corner of his mouth moved. You figured it out fast. Tower operators track patterns, I said. It's the job. What pattern did you track? He said, quietly, like he was genuinely asking, like the answer mattered to him beyond the professional context. I looked at him, the evening light, the tarmac still warm underfoot. The Iowa sky doing its enormous flat country thing, going orange and pink at the edges in a way that has no equivalent anywhere else I've been. You gave me information in the order I needed it, I said. Every time, without being asked. I paused. Nobody does that the first time. It takes people a season to learn what a tower operator needs to hear and when. You did it in the first transmission. He was quiet for a moment. I've worked with a lot of tower operators, he said. Most of them, when the fire gets close, they go quiet. They stop reporting because they're managing fear and reporting at the same time and something has to give. He looked at me. You kept reporting, right up until you locked the tower. The data doesn't stop being useful because I'm scared, I said. No, he said, it doesn't. He held my gaze. You were scared. I was, I said. I counted to 51 in smoke. I know, he said. Again, the same 2 words, carrying more than they held the first time. I was there. I was counting, too. I know. This is the moment. Right here. I need you to stay. He moved first. Not dramatically. Just closed the 3 feet between us until we were close. The way 2 people are close when they have stopped pretending the distance is about anything other than a decision. His hand came up. Slow, certain, and his fingers curved around the back of my neck, warm and deliberate. The grip of someone who has decided and is done deliberating. I went still. The way I'd gone still in the smoke. Trusting the person with the better view. His forehead came to mine. Gentle. The same economy he brought to everything. No excess, no performance, exactly the right amount of contact for exactly the right duration. His thumb moved once along the line of my jaw. Once. like a period at the end of a sentence that had been a long time coming. We stood like that on the flight line in the Iowa evening, foreheads together, his hand warm at the back of my neck, the tarmac heat rising around us and the sky going every color at once, and the ground crew moving past us with the professional indifference of people who have seen pilots come home before. "Brennan," he said, very quietly, against my face. "Yeah," I said. "I want to take you to dinner," he said. "Tonight, there's a place on Court Avenue in Des Moines. They do a late seating and they have a patio that faces west, and the sunset from there is—" He paused. "It's worth seeing." "How do you know what the sunset looks like from there?" I said. "I've been there twice," he said. "Both times I thought, I want to show this to someone." A beat. I didn't have someone. Something in my chest opened, slow like a window being raised after a long winter. "You have someone now," I said. His hand pressed once at the back of my neck, warm, certain, the same single deliberate motion. Then he straightened. Didn't move away, just straightened, so we were standing close and looking at each other in the gold light with the full, honest distance of two people who have nothing left to perform. "Court Avenue," he said, 8 o'clock. "I'll be there at 7:55, I said. He smiled, full, slow, from somewhere deep, the kind of smile that has been making its way to the surface for a while and has finally arrived. It changed his whole face. I had been listening to his voice for 43 minutes and thinking about it for 3 hours, and I was entirely unprepared for what his smile did to the situation. 7:55, he said. "I'll be there at 7:50. The air attack base has a perimeter camera on the flight line. The timestamp reads 1834. Two figures standing close on the tarmac, one in a DNR field shirt, one in a flight suit with the Marsh air attack patch. The Iowa evening light is doing its long gold thing across the frame. One figure's hand is at the back of the other's neck. Their foreheads are together. They are not moving. The footage holds for 53 seconds. I know because the incident review required me to pull the base camera archive, and I found it while I was looking for the tanker's approach footage, and I watched it once, and then I closed the file and finished the report. But I thought about those 53 seconds for the rest of the week, about the way they looked from the outside. Two figures in the evening light still, the flight line noise around them, the Iowa sky enormous behind them. The way stillness looks from the outside when it is not the absence of movement but the presence of something that doesn't need to move. Some things don't need to be confirmed. They just need to be witnessed. He texted at 19:49. 11 minutes before we'd agreed. Already here, West Patio. The sky is doing something you need to see. I was parking on Court Avenue, still in my field shirt, smelling faintly of smoke in a way that I had decided was honest rather than embarrassing. I read the text standing between my truck door and the sidewalk. On my way in, I typed, "Don't let it end before I get there." His response, "It won't. The best part is when it goes dark. I'll wait." I put my phone in my pocket and walked toward the restaurant. Des Moines on a Tuesday evening in July. Warm, ordinary. The city going about its business without any particular awareness of the Henderson fire, or the wind event, or the service track, or the 51 seconds of smoke. That is the job, to hold the line so the city doesn't have to know, to be the eyes it doesn't know it needs. He was at a table by the west railing when I came through to the patio, already looking toward the door. When he saw me, something settled in his face. The same thing I'd seen on the flight line, the specific quality of a person receiving something they'd been waiting for and finding it is what they hoped. I sat down across from him. The sky to the west was going orange and then red, and then the specific deep pink that the Iowa prairie horizon does when the conditions are right, which is not every evening, and which is, when it happens, one of the genuinely unrepeatable things about this part of the world. "You were right," I said. "About the sunset." "I usually am," he said, "about the things worth seeing." He was looking at me when he said it, not at the sky. I reached across the table. He met me, his hand forward, palm up, an offering rather than a reach, and my hand found his and his fingers closed around mine with the same certainty he'd brought to the back of my neck on the flight line, warm and deliberate and completely without hesitation. "You okay?" he said. I keep being, I said. The slow smile, deep from the eyes outward, arriving at his mouth like light that has traveled a long way. Me too, he said. The sky went dark. We stayed. New story tomorrow, every single day. Subscribe. You don't want to miss it.